So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rosana Esteller, who from Boston Scientific will be giving us an inside scoop on some of the advances that she's been working on. Thanks, Rosana.
Thank you. Okay, well, I will be presenting pretty much on what is the impact that we might expect in present and future of AI and digital transformation in clinical trials. And the first thing I want to do is ask you a question. Do you know how much it costs to bring a medical device to market? Not even to market, PMA, which is the moment FDA approved. After that, there is a long way to market the product. And do you know how long it takes and how much it costs? So I will ask you for a class 3 and as well as for a drug. So for me, it was very enlightening to compare drugs because I thought drugs are easy. It's a 3-month trial, but it costs 1.1 to 2.7 billion to bring it to all the phases for drugs. Devices is 50 to 500 million. And the times, I'm not assuming a BCI device. If it is a BCI, it's way more than 10 years, okay? So why I'm mentioning this is because what AI can do and the digital infrastructure is accelerate and improve clinical trials. And what are the main challenges of clinical trials? Let's see. Okay, the main challenges, high costs. A clinical trial for a new indication can be quite daunting expensive. It can be in the millions because it requires a lot of enrollment, a lot of bottlenecks when you want to recruit patients, and then you have to manage risk because you don't want to do that investment and fail, right? So it's a lot of challenges. Now, what are the opportunities? I'm going to list kind of like the phases of studies and put some examples of opportunities, and then we'll drive into what we have done in one study that we are conducting in collaboration with Baylor College of Medicine. So here you have first the design. And in the design phase, when you're designing your study, one of the challenges is what is my inclusion criteria, my inclusion-exclusion criteria. And you could use AI to, for example, once you have those criteria, run a simulation and see what will you end up in the population, and just putting ideas there. Oh, and this is only inspired by the publication that you see there, but there is a lot of other references that I will be quoting. So recruitment, oh my God, that can be the pinnacle in a study because you always get into delays. It's also the screening process is one example of a lot of problems, takes a lot of time because the clinical coordinator have to go and review if the patients meet the criteria, and then if they do, it's a long process. Well, you could use NLN algorithms, right, to automate and go through your electronic records and screen the patients that qualify. Then, and this and again, just a few examples. There is a lot more that can be done. In the execution phase, you have on safety monitoring, you can incorporate wearable technologies that tell you automatically if there has been adverse events, depending on the type of the study, the condition you're looking. Data collection can be dramatically improved. Imaging, there is a lot of imaging and lab that have to wait for a physician to come and provide radiologists to give a criteria. You can have instant AI algorithms. Maybe you all of these know. And interpretation of results. Everybody's analyzing data with deep learning or ML. But I'm going to now shift and give you an example of how we have used it in the Dynamo study. Quickly, I will say the Dynamo study is a study that we started to do dynamic modulation for spinal cord stimulation to treat chronic pain. And the idea here is that we want to understand the clinical value of time-varying pulses as opposed to the traditional stimulation that is a constant train of pulses. So we're constantly modulating the pulses. And to go really quickly, the study design is an RCT crossover double-blind, and it has 3 blocks. And in each of these blocks, we had an exploratory endpoint. And this point was, in the bottom, I'm sorry, you see on the left the static traditional constant pulses. On the right bottom, you see, or the left for you, well, you see the varying pulses. And there are 3 blocks because we have the static block, traditional constant pulses, intensity modulated, and rate modulated. Now, we added one exploratory endpoint because we wanted not only have the evaluation period at the end of each block, we wanted to know how the patients are doing during the block, during the full block, because we do a period of automatic adjustment, manual adjustment, and automatic adjustment of the stimulation parameters. But the patients go with the programs, and we don't know how they are doing. How do we know not to bring them? So we created infrastructure for this, and the exploratory endpoint is based on surveys. But how do you automate these surveys? Well, before I dive deep into that, who are the protagonists? You have the patient, the clinical coordinator, the researcher that created the tools you will see, and the clinician. And of course, a storage medium where you are saving all your data in the cloud, as in this case. Then we created this infrastructure that you see in the slide where we have the patient through the smartphone answer daily surveys that go into the back end. We use a company, or Baylor in collaboration with us, use a company called Twilio that enables Suffice and provides a text messaging infrastructure with all the regulatory compliance needed, not only for HIPAA, but also for federal. Believe it or not, there is a high level of federal requirements just to text a person. So you have to be fulfilling not only the clinical, but also federal. And then we also have a sensor in the patients that even though they don't wear it for the whole period, they wear it during the evaluation period. And we wanted to automate all that and get daily surveys when they were wearing this sensor. And that data goes seamlessly to the internet. On the clinical coordinator side, we don't have pretty much, except for one, all the assessments are electronic, and so many of the visits are even done virtually. So that way we save time and cost in paper and in all the manual piece. And this goes automatically into the storage. And then that's what you do, but what you do with that data. We created a dashboard. This was, again, a collaboration between Baylor and Boston. We developed this dashboard that enables us to know in pseudo-real time. I say pseudo-real time because it's not real time as we would envision, but daily. We get, if you look at it in the morning and you look at it at noon, you see the same results. But if you look the next day, you will see the changes. And one of the milestones that we have in this exploratory endpoint was to track compliance. We have been astonished of how the compliance has been with the patients. And I will say that I think over time, I need to accelerate. I want to just illustrate one thing in this slide, which is the one, there are many things happening in AI and what is coming. But the top left, the one that talks about reducing the sample size, is also a call of action for all of you, especially for those who are doing clinical studies or have done clinical studies already. So how do you reduce the size? In a nutshell, very quickly, on the left, you see what we are doing and what everybody does in the Dynamo study, the standard RCT study with all the power, the statistical power you need to suffice and all the enrollment. Imagine that you can create a virtual cohort of patients by kind of cloning or creating digital twins for the control group and maybe even for the treatment group. And you can do this post-study and demonstrate outcomes of you who have done less patients versus the patients you did, if everybody starts showing FDA that this has a value, we may be able to get at some point on reducing the patients. I think I need to accelerate. I will get to the conclusion. This is an area that is in its infancy, in my opinion, because in clinical trials, as you see, the publications are starting to grow, and the impact will grow as guidance from regulators comes, because there is not enough guidance. There are a lot of benefits and challenges, but that's it. Any questions? No time for questions.
Yeah, we have time for a couple questions.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Do you mind explaining how you said you plan to reduce the sample size? So, yeah.
Yeah, our plan is the way we are seeing it is post-study. It's not we are doing it preemptively, because now we cannot get FDA approval the way we would like. And the things, not that we are seeking FDA approval, this is exploratory, but not get the claims we want. But I want to do that just because I believe that in the long run, if more people do this, you can achieve, you can persuade regulatory bodies to reduce enrollment that might not be needed, especially with healthy subjects. So our plan is to take first the healthy subjects and create digital twins using AI, pretty much a virtual cohort where there are publications already. I listed one there where they actually did this from Ross 2024. And I think you could even think on doing it for the treatment group. I'm assuming, of course, that you have a control group and you're talking about RCTs, not exploratories where there is total open label and there is nothing, right? But that's our plan. And the way you do it, you use ML or deep learning algorithms. And you go, for example, for healthy controls, you look at the population, look at the specific parameters that you know are the disease variables that characterize the group, and then you clone the healthy subjects to introduce some randomness with the software using the machine learning or deep learning. Typically machine learning, I will say, for that one.
Had you planned to deal with pre-specifying your success criteria if you were able to do that?
Well, that part is farther from what we have done. We are planning to do this because I think I'm passionate about the possibility to accelerate trials and reduce size, but we haven't decided how to pre-specify criteria. I do know that in this paper, they said you could use this to reduce the patients and keep your statistical power, or keep the patients and increase the statistical power. So we are planning to follow a similar approach. We will use the traditional statistical techniques to determine the power of the study that you need. And then we will use this and say, hey, if we have this number of less patients, let me create the virtual twins and then compare the two results. And it is below the statistical, but I think, if you see, it's typically 10, 20%, no more than that, because if not, you get into a random space. It's something that needs to be explored. Again, it's in his infancy, 2024 publication. If I am correct, November, so it's very recent.
Great.
Yeah.
I know there are more questions, but maybe after the session, if you don't mind, I'm sure the speakers will be around after, if that's all right. So thank you, Dr. Esteller.
Sure.
Please join me in. Thank you. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Abbey Becker, who's from Medtronic, who will be giving us the next talk.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about how Medtronic is looking at personalized neuromodulation through the use of neural sensing. This might not work. There we go. My disclosures. So as most of you know, neural sensing has played a large role in neuromodulation historically from the beginning. And this has gone back in deep brain stimulation to providing critical feedback about target location during the implant procedure, and then moving towards A lot of academics and researchers discovering all these unique biomarkers that provide objective feedback about specific symptoms like bradykinesia or tremor in Parkinson's disease and essential tremor. But the challenge has been that all of these signals could be detected in the operating room during intra-op procedures or in externalized patients, but the ability to chronically sense these signals from an implantable device was a challenge. The signals that you're detecting are about 1 million times smaller than a cardiac signal or a stimulation artifact, and being able to sense those has been quite a journey for Medtronic. So started all the way back in 2007 with a lot of people in this room, where the first embedded circuit design was developed, and a partnership through our Activa PC plus S program, our Summit RC plus S program, and then the NIH Brain Initiative, partnerships with, again, a lot of you in this room and many academic centers to really advance the use cases of sensing, show that we can technically do it, and also show the value of sensing in providing clinically meaningful feedback. All of that has culminated in, recently our EU and US approval of ADBS, our closed loop adaptive stimulation therapy for Parkinson's disease, and a feature called electrode identifier, which I'm going to talk about today. So ADBS, as I think you saw this morning with the patient that was shown, which was great, really is a huge step towards personalizing therapy and neuromodulation. Here we're taking a signal that is specific to this patient and automatically adjusting the stimulation amplitude based on what the patient needs. And you saw the patient today and how happy they were with that therapy. We are very excited that this is starting to make a huge impact in patients' lives. And we got here through our ADAPT PD global trial. And this was a really innovative study. Up until this point, all of the closed loop stimulation that had been tested in Parkinson's disease was really using externalized patients or only for a few days. This was the first study that really looked at chronic delivery of closed loop stimulation. It was the first study that looked at multiple targets. It was the first study that looked at different algorithms that you could use. We have multiple algorithms available on the device, again, depending on what your patient needs. And so we're really happy with the results of that study. But it's not just closed loop DBS that we think that sensing can make an impact for. It's also programming, right? And so we also have launched a feature called electrode identifier, where the focus is really to provide patient-specific information that can help a clinician decide, where do I want to stimulate, or where might I want to start stimulating? And so what you can see here is a mock-up of, or a screenshot of this feature showing where your patient-specific signal is the strongest. So where you see those 3 green dots, that's indicating that biomarker for this patient is the strongest at this location. Maybe that's where you want to start delivering stimulation. And we partnered with the University of Colorado, some clinicians and researchers there, to test this feature out. And actually we saw a significant improvement in programming time by using the sensing information compared to the standard clinical monopolar review assessment that's done in movement disorders. So I think it went from about 2 hours per hemisphere to do the full clinical assessment down to something around 20 minutes with the sensing information. So really trying to use that neural sensing to personalize the therapy and create an efficient workflow to be able to set these patients up with their best settings. We were also able to look at the anatomy and how the sensing information actually aligns really well with the anatomical expectation of where we would want to deliver stimulation. But using that sensing information, we were actually able to get programming settings that required less energy and were actually more tailored for this patient to the smaller location that we might want to target. So you can see in red the volume of tissue activation with their entry program, and then in the blue, the optimal program that was selected based on sensing. But it's not, I think we are committed at Medtronic to continue to deliver these innovations. We're very excited about the launch of ADBS and electrode identifier, but how do we continue to leverage sensing to both make the setup and programming easier and simpler, and then also provide clinically actionable insights to clinicians. So here's just a few examples of things we've been thinking about, using sensing to guide amplitude. So we know you can detect different biomarkers that might indicate symptoms and also biomarkers that might indicate side effects. And can this help clinicians understand what amplitude window might you want to use for a patient? We can use sensing to hopefully help us automate the setup of adaptive stimulation and make that faster. And we're also committed to the integration of both the sensing and the anatomical information to give you the whole picture. But I think we really are at the starting point of what we can do with sensing. We've seen a huge impact already, again, like you saw with the patient this morning. But really the true value of sensing is it's not just a snapshot in time. You're able to collect this data longitudinally as the patient progresses with their disease, right? So you can collect this data out of clinic over months, over years, and being able to have this, we can derive clinically meaningful insights from this type of data. And we have now about over 80,000 patients worldwide implanted with Percept and sensing capabilities today. That data and building out the infrastructure to deal with that data is going to allow us to learn faster and more about how we manage these patients over longer periods of time. And here you can see a couple examples of information that might be helpful in monitoring how a patient's doing and actually provide an actionable insight to a clinician about what they would want to do with this patient. And so on the left, you can see neural sensing data was set up in the patient from the time of implant to their time of first programming. And you can really nicely see that microlesion effect. So you see the signal, your biomarker is really low here and it starts to come back up over time. The timeline of this is patient specific. And the reason why this is important is if you start programming here, your patient actually hasn't normalized or come back to normalization yet. And so you're programming to a moving target. So having that information can be really critical to say, where am I in the patient's recovery period from the surgery? In the middle, you can see an example of circadian patterns. So we can leverage AI to pull out some of the patterns that we see in each patient that we might not have been able to do before and automatically classify different brain states that might be important. So here in blue, you can see we are automatically able to detect when the patient is sleeping, and in orange when the patient is awake. And this might be useful in telling us when a patient is having difficulties with sleep and maybe their therapy needs to be adjusted. So we have a poster on this one tomorrow. Please go check it out along with the amplitude information. And then finally on the right, you can see we're also able to look at this longitudinal data to say, when is a patient fluctuating? So in Parkinson's disease, patients are taking medication. They're also getting stimulation therapy. They may be doing things like exercising. All of that impacts their disease state and their symptoms. And being able to see when a patient is better or worse throughout the day can really help a clinician inform what they may need to do to personalize the therapy program for that patient. So we think that the data being collected from these over 80,000 devices is going to be huge in being able to leverage AI and analytics to more effectively pull out a lot of these actionable patterns. And while I focus today on deep brain stimulation, we're really committed that that sensing information is critical across our neuromodulation therapy. So not just deep brain stimulation, but spinal cord stimulation and also pelvic health as well. All right, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, thank you. So we have time for maybe a couple quick questions. Yep.
You mentioned that database that's developing with the 80,000 patients with Percept. Is it going to be like NeuroPaces, that it's going to be owned still, the data is actually owned by the clinicians, or is it something, how are you managing to get access to that?
Great question. We actually currently give the sensing data today to clinicians, right? You can actually pull a JSON file off of the device, from the device onto the tablet, from the tablet off and onto a computer and do your own analysis on the data collected in the JSON file. So that's not something that we're looking to take away, right? I think what we're looking to do is how do we make sure that people who don't want to spend the time doing analysis are able to access the insights that are collected from that data. So even, we have been developing a clinician-facing portal that is in a beta testing mode, where how do we put in those visualizations that are really impactful and could be used for remote monitoring in the future, but not inhibiting access to the raw data itself.
Hi. Sorry, right here.
Okay, thank you.
So all of these engineering tools we can develop are really cool and like potentially really innovative and can make a huge difference for patients. But how does Medtronic spend time thinking about how to integrate these into the clinician workflow? Because none of these end up useful if we can't get clinicians to use them.
We spend a lot of time thinking about that. I think anytime you're trying to change a workflow, that is a huge uphill battle, right? We don't want to change the workflow. We want to supplement the workflow and make it easier. I think that's where something like the electrode identifier feature, how do you work that into the standard assessment during the first programming visit? And how do you use that to maybe save time compared to what you would traditionally do versus doing something new? I think that's really important to us, and I think that's where we, with any new feature, look to partner with clinicians, partner with academic centers to make sure we're handling that workflow component correctly.
Great. Well, I know there are probably more questions, but let's thank Dr. Becker once more. So the next speaker is Max Lundeen from Inspire Medical, and Max will be taking us through some of the new innovations at Inspire.
Hi everyone, I'm Max Lundeen. I am a principal AI and machine learning scientist at Inspire Medical Systems. I'm going to be talking about accelerating product development with AI. I was really excited to see the earlier presentation on using AI for clinical trials. This is very relevant. This is going to be a pretty high-level presentation around identifying opportunities for AI in your business or in your own personal work, taking action on those opportunities, building confidence in yourself and that solution. And I think that this is really relevant right now with all the advancements that we have with large language models. It's really expanded the opportunity space for AI. So it's time to think about how you can start to take advantage of those. And we'll wrap up with a case study of how we're doing using deep learning for an interesting application in clinical data analysis. Quick intro to Inspire. This is our system. There's an implantable pulse generator. We're the leader in hypoglossal nerve stimulation for obstructive sleep apnea. We're coming up on 100,000 patients implanted. We have a 80% reduction in sleep apnea events and great patient satisfaction as well. This is our patient-facing system. There's a remote that controls the implanted pulse generator there and an app that tracks usage. Here's how the device actually works, is that there's a stimulation lead wrapped around the hypoglossal nerve. There's the pulse generator in the chest, which is detecting respiration. It's going to predict an inspiration, and then it will stimulate the patient's tongue forward to open up the airway to prevent the apnea event. We also have a clinician platform for management of our patients. They can monitor patient outcomes and device usage. We have 25 million nights of data and counting in our current platform. Really what I'm going to be talking about is continuous improvement leading to exponential growth. Minor, small changes that you can make to your process for both businesses and for individuals as well can lead to great growth over long periods of time. There are studies coming out now that show that companies aggressively adopting AI are benefiting from them faster. They're building faster, and there are all sorts of benefits, as we've seen earlier, to the scientific and clinical process. And AI systems, the capability is getting here. This is from a Stanford report. Stanford AI Index came out this year. These are across a bunch of different task types. Image classification, you can see it's kind of a solved problem as of 2016. But you look at PhD level science questions. We're getting there now. That dashed line there is the human baseline. The capability is here, so how are you taking advantage of it? This is our a really lightweight internal process that we're using for finding AI opportunity internally, and we're thinking about it in a few different tiers of AI opportunity. The first one being this lower value and lower effort manual, repetitive, and rules-based tasks. So these are tasks with easily defined inputs and outputs. For example, design history files, you're populating a document. Again, we're talking product development here, so you're pulling various knowledge sources, tables, and images, and you have a paragraph of text that you have a well-defined standards that need to fill this paragraph of text. It's a great use case for large language models. Decision support with human in the loop. These are still more easily defined inputs and outputs, but could be more riskier use cases where you need a human to review before you can fully automate a solution. One example, and this is related to the case study I'll go over, is for data annotation. You can have a model that would be proposing labels and then a human signing off on those labels. Tier 3, new capability, not previously possible. This is kind of higher effort stuff, higher value, and I'm talking more agentic large language model systems. These are systems that can actually take action in a system, change and update. They have access to tools. One example would be an internal agent that could take a Jira task or some sort of issue and then draft code and submit a pull request for review or edit by a human. So you've identified all these opportunities. How do you prioritize these opportunities internally? In general, it's impact versus effort and focusing on those quick wins. You want the higher impact for the lower effort. How do you assess effort in a medical device company? It's more than just the technical development involved. There's a lot of other considerations that need to come into play, and especially for AI, the big one is going to be the data availability and the maturity of your data platform. Are the data readily available? Are they accessible? And then cross-functional collaboration. Do you need multiple teams involved in the solution? Is this a solution that's quality impacting, where you need to get it, formally validated by your quality team? This is going to be the majority of the work for actually bringing value to a company. Is going to be beyond the technical development. It's building that cross-functional support. And then things that can bring down the impact of a solution. Is a department ready for AI within your company? What's the total time to value? Is this something that can immediately bring value, or does it take time for a group to get up and running with it? And sometimes the business priorities or strategy are just not aligned with what you're trying to bring. In general, for generative AI, data availability is, there's more of an interesting twist where you're more concerned about the knowledge flow and rather than the classical definition of data. In general, the takeaways: start small and measure well. Do a small pilot and prove the impact early that you can bring value to the org through an AI solution. Most of the work will be building confidence in that solution and meeting cross-functionally to build confidence with your clinical and regulatory teams. Quick slide on AI integrity, use policies. You should know your institution's guidelines or your company's guidelines. Your company should have guidelines on AI guidance. What data can you use with what tools? What are all the considerations? Can you use generative AI to write a clinical protocol? What are the considerations with that? And then a big emphasis on human here. What are the full human impacts of the AI solution you're developing beyond just raw performance metrics? Quick case study here. We have an ongoing clinical study, the Inspire Singapore study, that has our newly FDA-approved Inspire 5 system implanted in patients. We're measuring the efficacy at a couple different time points. The primary endpoint is stimulation overlap with inhalation. So as the patient breathes in, we want to be stimulating during that full breath in. The higher that value, the better our device is doing. That's a primary endpoint. But we need ground truth labels for the inhalation to compare against. And so we've done this previously to build the algorithm on a previous data set of using a fully manual process. There were about 1,500 manual hours that were spent labeling within 100 millisecond accuracy, the start and stop of inhalation. So we used that data set that was previously built to train a deep learning model, a bidirectional LSTM with a multi-head attention component and then a linear classifier on the end. Really what we're solving here is a change point detection problem. When does the signal change from one state to another, from an exhalation pause to an inhalation, from an inhalation to an exhalation? So we trained that model. It met the criteria that we set up for ourselves, and then we stopped doing work on it. We tried to build confidence in the solution. This was the majority of the work was making sure that people saw the value, the time is worth it, and the risk is low to use this for a clinical study. So our new ML-enabled human-in-the-loop process here takes 2.5 hours a night to label instead of 16 hours. So far in 2025, we've saved about 400 hours of manual labor using this solution. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Max. Questions from the audience? Maybe I can start with one. So, with AI, or maybe I'll go with this question. So I remember early on looking at Inspire Medical's inclusion criteria when they first started, and it was kind of very focused. And now I think it's kind of broadened a bit. And so when you think about sort of training things with AI, when you have different sort of patient groups that might benefit from this therapy, how have you thought about sort of the models and training those on those data?
Right, yeah, so our BMI indications have expanded, and so yeah, obviously super important to properly capture the demographics. And if you have a limited demographic in one data set, to properly restrict the usage of that model to understand that, hey, the new data coming in are not representative, they don't fall within the distribution of the original data. So yeah, it's all about collecting new data, more representative of the data or the patient population as it expands.
Just a quick question. This is because I'm not familiar with the technology probably, but when you deliver the stimulation, it seems that you want to maximize overlap with the inspiration. So you might need to detect when inspiration is coming in, when the device is attached. How do you do that? Because you had the need to mark, so I just was wondering, do you have something there? Or?
Yes, so inside the implanted device, there's an accelerometer in our latest FDA-approved version. There used to be a sensing lead that sensed pressure differentials. Now it's an accelerometer in the device, and so yeah, there's some filtering that's performed, and then we're looking at the rise and fall of the patient's chest. Really what we're measuring is respiratory effort, and using that to essentially predict when the inhalation starts, so we could start stimulation a little bit before to make sure the airway's clear.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Generally speaking, how many data points would you need to train an AI model?
It depends on the problem, and it depends on, it really depends on the problem and then the accuracy you're trying to get. For the slide, for the case study that we showed, we didn't need that many data points. I mean, you can look at the signal and you can really easily tell. We had 150,000 labeled breaths. We didn't need that many to train a model that great, because when you can visually look at something and really easily see those differences, it's easier. So it really depends. I mean, typically we're looking for 1,000 data points for a representative model, but it depends on how accurate. If you're just looking for a representation or an estimate, then less is fine. But
great. Yeah, well, thank you, Max. Yeah. So the last speaker of the session we have is from Abbott, so Vivek Tyagi.
Okay, last speaker of the day. Hopefully, I'll be great. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am so inspired to be here today, and looking at the presentations from my colleagues and the research that's been shared, it's been inspiring. And it's also important to note that how the industry as a whole is recognizing the challenges and embracing the new AI technology that we are all together here, right? But we also have to recognize that the ultimate goal that we're all striving towards is to help patients, the people in need, right? And the key pillar to support that goal is to how to speed up the translation of academic research to industry solutions, right? And I think some of these points have already been noted, right? I didn't know that much money goes into drug research. That's amazing. Okay, so today I'll be discussing some methodologies to fast track this journey using AI, and let's dive into it. Okay, everybody knows AI, but I do want to put some high-level kind of terms so that we can talk a common language. So in terms of progress in foundational models, right, let's look at the journey and look at how quick this journey has been evolving, right? Chatbots, 2022, OpenAI releases, ChatGPT. We've been asking recipes for omelet and asking to summarize the papers since then, right? It's amazing, pretty good. Okay, but the key thing is you can still only ask a step, right? You just have to know the step to do that. Okay, AI agents, we talked about that a little bit. So AI agents, the concept has been around for a while, but with foundational models, these have been energized, right? I think since 2023, the concept of an agent is it uses a foundational model with reasoning and action, with memory and other things to give you a system which is now goal-oriented, right? So you don't have to ask steps, you do goal, right? Something like you have your self-driving system, self-driving cars, right? Goal is take me to point A, from point A to point B safely, follow the traffic rules, okay? Does that, right? And the AI agents are like, I would say also, if you look at the embodiment in a physical world, would be something like a specialized robot, doing things for you, knows how to do it, tell them, and then it gets done, okay? The next step in evolution, which is happening very fast, is an agentic system, right? Agentic system uses AI agents in collaboration to achieve a further higher autonomy. And then you can have like a high-level goals given to it, and it does stuff. Example of which, I will just give it to you. Okay, so let me introduce you to the agentic neuroscientist that we're working at Abbott. Agentic neuroscientist is an agentic system, which I just described earlier, with a focus on neuroscience discovery, okay? Now, before we get into technical details into it, like with every technology, we have to first visualize what's happening all around us, right? Because technology is moving so fast, we have to first also understand what's the cultural and sociological implications of that. So you might look at how the research today goes from academia to industry. So you may have a research idea, and then you want to get the research idea to industry and maybe get a product out for patients. This is how it works. You need people, you need experts. These experts could be people for other disciplines that you need the help in to develop your idea. They could be your privacy or legal people who wants to help you out to get the idea into fruition, okay? Now with these experts, the thing is, you need them the best in the field, right? It has to have the top of the knowledge. You need them to be available at your time. You definitely want everybody to be available at the time that you want them to be. And more importantly, you need them to be passionate about the idea as you are, right? It's not always the case. So I don't know about you, but this is a challenge, right? This is a challenge. Okay, now, how does an agentic system would work? The agentic system is an augmentation of these AI experts into an embodiment of a specific AI system which can reason and do goal-oriented tasks for you. Now, this is something which we have to figure out that how does now it accelerate? It has the top of the knowledge all the time. I did some search. I'm not able to present the number, but looks like IEEE has 20 papers per hour published, right? How do you keep track of that? We've been here like 1 hour. I just missed those 20 papers. So I'm not an expert now, right? Agentic system can do that. Secondly, they are available around the clock whenever you need them, okay? And third, you are in control. They share your passion because you are driving them, right? So that's something to think about. One of the key things also is, I'll try to give you a visual representation of something futuristic. Bear with me, but this is happening. Okay, how do you interact with them? Just like when computer came in, graphical user interface was the most natural way to interact with them. AI agents, the most natural way is to treat them like humans, like human personas, right? And human persona helps us to interact with them in a more natural way, and we can visualize them as well as a better collaborator with us, okay? Something like this, okay? Now, these are avatars. The whole idea, the objective here is to visualize how the collaborators of the future will work for us, right? And now you as a researcher, you're the human in the field, by the way, is now empowered with surrounded by these AI experts at the top of the knowledge, working for you around the clock, and get you the thing that you want to do is transactional thing about getting the medicine to the people, okay? Now, I'm going to give you a quick technology thing. It's a stick figure. I don't want to give out the recipe. But now the things that happens is if you have a question, if you have an idea to like do this brilliant thing, you have, how do you get to this product? And I said months, but it's been proven years, right? So correct that. Okay. Now, the thing is, imagine an AI agent. Not imagine, it's already there, but just focusing on that part. So the AI agent now helps you. Your question is interdisciplinary. It is dependent on other fields as well, right? So you have a pain specialist agent, which is backed by a foundational model, right? Which has its own hardware, memory, vector database, and the runtime environment, which is working in breaking down into this problem. And then when this pain agent has a question, just like human would, will reach out to its collaborator, which is a neuroscience research agent, which is, again, has another foundational model, is kind of vendor agnostic for us, and his own database, everything is own. So now you can see the synergy. Like you just it's like putting a pebble in the pond. You just let the waves follow through the agentic system, right? And then, of course, if there's a biological thing, now comes a clinical research agent. We just saw about that, right? How clinical research is important. But then you also have to federate it. We want the system to be end-to-end, in which you are the driver or orchestrator of the idea, and then using that, of course, and documentation that you have to do that has to be factored in. And I'm showing this as like one-to-one, but this is many-to-many system. Like agents can talk to each other in any time feel that they want to. Of course, the human in the loop is basically doing the orchestration, being an arbitrator of what's happening, what needs to be done, where the focus needs to go. Grounding is very important. Just like I said, the data that has been created is so fast, and thanks to AI, actually, is creating the data fast, right? So these agents are grounded in the database. So 22 publications that came in last hour, we already know it, right? It's already been factored in. And the other thing that I would say is that we also are putting test barriers. Your agents needs to be tested all the time to say, are they performing to the reference level that you're expecting them to? We don't want to put blind faith into the agents as such. And with all this, the years of development can be weeks, because there's an end-to-end system that's been working for you. Okay, good part, and very important note that with AI, needs to be responsible AI. As an industry, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the idea here is that we need to be transparent. We need to be safe, okay? And what is the takeaway? Right on time, okay. Accelerated and efficient knowledge discovery, weeks, not years, okay? Which means more research, more researchers can be engaged, more problems can be solved, which ultimately means more value reaching out to the patients and people in need. So, that's the ultimate goal we all share. And we invite you to join us in this journey. Thank you.
Love it. Questions?
Hi, Summer Amundsen Huffmaster here at the University of Minnesota. I have a question for you and just for people like the speakers from this session in general. We know that AI has a lot of power, but it is a garbage in, garbage out system, right? And so if you have good quality data, you should have good results. If you have bad quality data or incomplete data sets, you'll have bad results, right? So my question is kind of arcing back to the panel earlier that I was on, admittedly, how are you ensuring that you are getting a diverse group of people who are, your original data set is including people and is not being biased, right? So if we have biased data going into our models, we're going to have biased results coming out, and it's just going to continue to cycle. And so I'm just curious to you or any of the other speakers how we're managing that.
A very good question, and we could spend a lot of time, and probably my colleagues will agree. First of all, I would argue that with foundational model, AI is a little bit better. It's garbage in, recycle items out, right? It's a little bit better, okay? Because we are feeding the whole knowledge of the world, right? It's no longer a machine learning rule-based thing, right? But still, the point is valid. The point is, that's why, as I mentioned, look at point number 4, be fair. It's the human implementator of these technology that has to come in, regulatory bodies and rule things. Yes, we definitely have to ensure. One thing I would say is that the rate of technology is so fast that AI will help us do that as well. An AI agent who would be the fair AI agent could be deployed to basically ensure that the data going into the agentic system is good. What we do not want to do is to have a bottleneck in the system, right? So fair, this has to be done at the organizational level. But it is important. It is very important that the data is diverse and is representative.
Yeah, my question kind of builds off of that. I guess with the idea of, this agent can take in all of the latest publications and spit out an idea. Learning to critique science is an art, and to look at, the conclusions of a paper and not take them at face value, but to really look at the figures and look at the statistics used and critique those and come up with your own conclusions of how valid you think the author's conclusions are. So I guess I'm kind of curious from an AI perspective, does the AI just look at the paper and say, okay, these are the conclusions that the authors have claimed, those are the conclusions that I now, consider the truth? Does that, is my
You're right.
point coming
I think
across?
it's a very, very valid question. And I would say that it goes back to when AI paints a picture, is it a good picture, right? It's like an art thing. But I'll also do one more analogy on this, right? I would say that right now, what AI is doing is getting humans faster where they want to go. I came from Dallas, 2.5-hour flight, right? My destination is here. So as a researcher, you're saying, and I just did that, by the way. I can give you an example. I was doing a literature review. I had 35 papers that I downloaded, which had some data. The challenge is, I'm not asking the AI to just do the research for me. I am still the person asking the question. I'm saying, what is the relationship between people having communications with the doctors? What are the key challenges? Read those 35 papers and tell me the top 5 reasons, right? So it's a scalability thing, right? Human is still the design pattern here, right? AI is a flight that gives you in 2.5 hours to the destination, right? Knowledge discovery can still be prompted. You can say that if you do a whole system towards it. That's why if you look at the system that we're building, you see there's a human orchestrating the system. We are not completely abdicating the research to AI. We are asking it to look broader. It's like a microscope, right? It's a tool which makes things bigger. So that's what I would say. But yeah, we're not asking AI to cure cancer yet. Okay.
Great. Yeah, well, let's thank Vivek one more time. Yeah.